From the 915 to H-Town, from the Panhandle Plains to the Valley, and everywhere in between, this is the 50/50 Podcast, powered by the 50/50 Podcast Network. Join me, Hector Cano, as we cover the Texas high school club and college soccer landscape, along with an inside look at the college soccer recruiting scene. The 50/50 Podcast is a platform about the people and for the people who are dedicated to the beautiful game. Here we go. It's another edition of Inside Texas High School Soccer, episode 12. I am your host, Coach Hector Cano, along with my lovely sidekick, lovely co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Hollywood himself, Mr. SAFC commercial, 15, 20, what are we at? Mr. Rafa
Somewhere
Castellina, Coach Rafa, how are you, buddy?
pretty good. Are you?
Hey man, I can't complain. I'm here. Had some technical issues as we continue to get used to our new system here. But how are tell us how are things?
Good. Just covered last night the SAFC game, the that loss against Miami, and then talk about Phoenix, and then looking forward to tomorrow's game because they do have an Open Cup game against Omaha, which is kind of funny that we're actually playing them twice for two cups, for the Open Cup and also for the Jaeger Cup. So it should be interesting. I think that game's going to be on Paramount Plus tomorrow evening. So if you have that, you can watch it there.
Yeah, yeah. I think interesting stuff, and I think what time is the game again?
I believe it's 7 o'clock, 7:30.
7. Okay, gotcha. Good deal. Well, hey, how was your weekend before we dive into state and everything? What I know. Saturday, you were at the SAFC game again, and for whatever reason, man, they just cannot get past Miami. How was that?
Uh, yeah, just I don't know that we saw the lineup. We're like, hey, we're gonna have some speed up front, but a couple of defensive miscommunications and lapses, and I'm like I said, we analyzed it yesterday, and I'm like, then our head coach gets red carded for I don't know for what. I mean, he's probably the most quietest person there on the bench, and a straight red. I'm like,
When
I don't
was
know
that
what
red
this.
card again? When exactly?
It was like in the midway of the first half,
Yeah.
and we've seen the replays. He didn't really do. I mean, I know he was out of his box, but that doesn't garner a red card. Unless he said something in another language. I mean,
Oh,
to the
maybe
ref,
could
okay,
have. He could have.
maybe, but
Could have gave him
you
a
know, but
just some colorful language in Spanish, right? That's his
yeah,
native tongue, right?
yeah, Yamosa. This is usually quiet, but I don't know. I
I
mean,
know.
this was.
I know when I saw that, well, I read it. I didn't see it. I read it, and I was just like, "That's got to be a typo, man. That's got to be a typo." But I guess not. Wow. Okay. So Sunday, what was how much? Well, Saturday before the San Antonio FC game. Tell us a little bit in terms of state, how much you got to see. I know you covered a good bit, but what was
Mhm,
your initial thoughts on before we dive into all the stuff that we're going to go over? Just your general
mhm.
initial thoughts on Saturday, but more importantly, the entire weekend, all 3 days.
Just like I said, that was the last game of the for the last day of the season, if you can say. Still some four interesting matchups. Like I said, you had some first timers. You had one with I guess you can call it Cinderella story. I mean, because it literally is. Um, and you have some couple powerhouses kind of making the return. It was like I said, it was an interesting Saturday. I got to see some most of the highlights. There was one game in particular I was very surprised with the score. I thought it'd be a lot closer. Um, and then there was another one I did kind of predict that it'd be a very tight game, like a defensive game. But then to cap it off, to finish the last game, I think the soccer gods for Texas high school soccer, they don't want the season to end. So hey, let's play an extra 20 minutes. So, but it's a good the way it capped off at the end. Like I said, pretty much put
Mhm.
a exclamation the season.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's great, and we're gonna get into all of that today. So if you were with us, if you caught our up all night show the other the other night, Saturday, it was Friday or no, yeah, what was that? Friday morning into
Midnight
Friday night into Saturday morning.
Saturday
uh,
morning.
it was we were late. We were got the show late, obviously, and got it in. We discussed day one and day two, and then of course it was kind of great timing because it was kind of mayhem that had just broken about an hour, a little over an hour before we
Mhm.
went on in terms of what had happened, what had transpired with Highland Park. And on Saturday, that was definitely the talk of just of the stadium, just kind of like what everybody, a lot of confusion, right? So, but in many cases, I think that it was a great 3 days. You know, all things considered. I know we talked about day one. Day one, we did get the official numbers. It was approximately it was 900 or 9,000 plus paid attendance. And that was not, again, counting workers, counting additional coaches, people that were already the media, all of that stuff. And then Friday and Saturday, we did not get final numbers. But if I had to guess, this is me just guessing, right? So here's why Thursday's 9,000 plus is significant. Is all of last year the total paid attendance for the state tournament, right? Last year was 11,000. Okay, that was from all right from the source, a really credible source that would know pretty well, extremely well plugged into the data there in Georgetown. There for the UIL, 11,000 was the total paid attendance last year. That we came up, we came 2,000 short of that in just one day. And again, keeping in mind that this was with less schools come right the same amount of games per se, but less schools coming because this is not no semifinal final. This is just straight finals. So 11,000 all of last year, and that was almost surpassed in just day one with 4A, right? So 4A really showed up. So kudos to 4A because they came out in force. So whether it was Canyon, whether it was Wimberley, um, they came out and it was awesome. It was awesome to see. It was awesome to experience. Of course, the Salina crowd as well, and then even just so many different factors in there for Thursday with 4A. But then, 5A and 6A on Friday and Saturday. If I had to guess, I'm going to guess it probably doubled last year's attendance of 11,000 looking at it across all 3 days. And that's just kind of me being maybe conservative, I would say. Uh, so I don't know if it averaged. I don't know if you could say it averaged 9,000 per day, but I would say it doubled probably the 11,000 total of last year. Thoughts on that, Coach?
Yeah, with the format being different, like I said, last year you started on Wednesday, you finished on Saturday. Plus, you had state semifinals and finals. This one it was basically just one 4 games per day for the 3 days, and to show that to kind of beat that shows something that the growth of the sport, the popularity of the sport, more fans are coming out to it. It's just a kudos to just help with all the coverage and so forth. It's really bringing out more fans to it, and also the talent also that we have too here in Texas. So it just goes to show that it's in the right direction. And who's to say maybe later down the road they may have to. I'm not saying a bigger venue, but maybe one that could, like I said,
Yeah.
kind of really liveling it up. But
Right.
just
Well,
but you never know. Like I said,
people keep talking up different venues, different locations, but I can tell
mhm.
what I got to tell you is this is um, the city of Georgetown, Georgetown ISD, their staff, and then of course just and then UIL as well, and then with Tasco and Attend it how it operates, and then in addition to the media, just it's a well oiled machine, and and they do a fabulous job of hosting it right from the city, the staff, the workers, the Georgetown, Georgetown High School, Georgetown ISD staff, the athletic director there as well. They the infrastructure there is pretty awesome. And then you talk about it really is a great facility. You talk about from the perspective of the stadium, the capacity, how it's designed, how the operation runs, the logistics of it, and then of course even from the media perspective, right? And just in speaking from the layout down on the field, the area, the coverage on the field, and then even of course even in the press box, it is a, it is the infrastructure is definitely there. So and we got Chief joining us here. Great show. Season starts today. Hey, Chief, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys. We talked about you guys the other night, and glad you're still here. Really appreciate you. Um, the so yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's you can't a bigger venue that has natural grass. It's not going to happen, right? It's just not going to happen, right? You're not. Hey, let us borrow your grass field facility, Q2 stadium for 12 games, right? It's not gonna it's not gonna happen. So, and because of its generally centralized location, I think there's a number of reasons why it works, right? So it's kind of, and then seeing it up close from a different perspective, covering it this year on the media side as well. I can see, you start to see why a lot of things make sense and why they're there. So just something to think about. So I thought I'd share that as well. But yeah, day three we're gonna excuse me. Day three we're gonna look at 6A today. We're gonna look at the 6A D1 D2 finals. We got that on tap, and we're gonna go through each of the games. And then we'll discuss. We'll do our wrap up here as well. We'll look at the breakdown of the individual days or the individual games, how the region by region, how they did, how they made out, and then we'll wrap up with a brief kind of, I guess, reflection, if you will, of the season that was, and then we'll start transitioning our way to our championship episodes that we look forward to. Hopefully, we can get. It's going to be a different setup this year with 12 champions. So we'll see what we can do, but definitely working on that. So thoughts on just the general season, Coach, before we kind of get into day three recap.
I think, like I said, going into something different with the now with a new playoff format with Division One and Division Two. You know, what kind of surprises we're going to be in store. And I know there were some grumblings about, well, some teams are going to get eliminated right away. Um, some of the best teams are going to be out. But in order to win a championship, you got to be the best. No
Correct.
matter the path. It could be, an easy, not saying easy path, but maybe a favorable path. But hey, I mean, if you beat some quality teams to get to the championship and win the championship, I mean, you're in your stripes. I mean, and that's the way it. You know, it's something to be proud of. To beat some of the best. I mean, that no one can take that away from you. So, um, but like I said, it also allowed the opportunity to have maybe some from first timers, and we saw quite a few of them this year, and some took a full advantage of winning a state championship.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't hit on it better myself here as we adjust our setup here. So here's what we're going to go ahead. We're going to look at our day three recap. We'll look at 6A, which was Saturday, April 12th, and which consisted of the 6A D1 and D2 finals for both the boys and girls. Rafa, you ready to go, man?
All right, ready to go.
All right, let me get the energy drink going. So, energy drink at 8:30 p.m. That's always great. Uh, all right, so let me go ahead and pull this guy up here, and we're going to look. So, first one that we're going to look at here, we're going to start off with, all right, Marcus and Stratford. All right, so this was our 6A girls D2 final first match of the day on Saturday, April 12th. Final score, Marcus 1, Stratford 0 on a beautiful set piece. I think it was about 22, 24 yards out. Thoughts on this one, Coach?
Going into this one, we knew this one was going to be a very tight game. Um, but the tradition with Marcus, what they've done, this past you can say this past decade, they've been a staple in the Dallas area, but also statewide. But then you have this Houston Stratford teams that have been making some noise these last few years, and they've just kind of fallen short, and they finally got here. So the way how the other games kind of played out with 4A and 5A is to say, hey, you never know what could happen here, and um, this was just a kind of a back and forth game, real defensive struggle, but like I said, Marcus was able to get one in, and that's all it took, just one, and they kept her shape defensively, kept away Stratford from any threats, and now they have another state championship.
Yeah, yeah, and this was, I mean, it was a tight one. It was a tight one. It was a great match to start the day. Very much back and forth. You got the thought. you got the impression that at any given moment Marcus was ready to kind of go unload, score. Stratford would come right back. Stratford would never let him pull away, and then in the second half, they get the goal on the set piece, and that proved to be the difference in what was a very back and forth affair. Thoughts on any players here, Coach, from this one?
Well, the MVP, who's the one that netted the lone goal, was Maddie Hayes. So
Right.
she locked up with the MVP honors. Like I said, beautiful set piece on that shot, and really beat the keeper there. The keeper really didn't have a chance to stop that,
Yeah, it was very well
and
placed.
yeah, and that's basically punched the ticket for Marcus on a very successful season. You know, they had a tough road to get here. They had to knock off Prosper, who was the defending state champs, and
Correct.
that's no easy task. And like I said, those two faced last year too, and they had an epic battle this year. I think Marcus finally got, like I said, got the best of them this year, and now they got to snatch the title away. And now, like I said, they're 6A Division One champions.
Yeah, Marcus emerges victorious, 1-0 over Stratford. They are the 6A girls D2 state champions, and Coach Smith, Aaron Smith, they win their second title in 3 years. You know, she won her first one
Mm-hmm.
there and the second one for Marcus. I think this marks the third for Marcus overall, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken. And she won her first one there 2 years ago. While
Yeah,
she was, I
sure.
think she was the interim, if I'm not mistaken, and then they made it official after that. But they went on a great run a couple years ago, and they're back. Win the 6A girls D2 state championship 1-0 over Stratford. All right, and we move on. So our boys D2 final here was an interesting. This was an interesting matchup because a lot of people weren't quite sure what to expect, how these two were going to match up between Mesquite and Vandergrift, and so this one was you had Vandergrift jumped out to a quick lead or relatively quick lead, and you saw the buildup in the counter. And this was a game. This was a game where, for whatever reason, it was just back and forth in terms of the defense to the attack for one, and then the defense to the attack for the other. And it was like neither team wanted to go through their midfield for a number of reasons, right? In terms of what they saw, in terms of how they wanted to go at the other team. Thoughts on this one, Coach?
Yeah, this, like I said, couple first timers, going into this final for D2. Mesquite, like I said, very surprising coming in, winning their region, winning the state semifinal. And then Vandergrift, like I said, last year, they were the defending Region 4 champions. We got to see them play last year. And, um, we kind of thought maybe they may take a little step back because, like I said, maybe they lost some key players. But I think that experience that they had from last year, they lost fell a game short against Flower Mound. Who, like I said, they ended up playing against Seven Lakes. So that all that experience that they received, kind of helped them through, kind of got you through the playoffs, and they knew what to expect here. Kind of the atmosphere playing there at Georgetown, and they just took full advantage of it. Come themselves a lead, and kind of really didn't look back and and finally they have now they got the opportunity to lift the trophy here for this year.
Yeah, yeah. And thoughts on players on this? I know you had mentioned the MVP, but any other thoughts
Hmm.
on players on this one, Coach?
So what really set the tone of the game was James Hammond. He was the MVP. He's the one that uh, uh, struck first for the game, and he was very pivotal, throughout this, throughout for this game, and his leadership, working with the other players, kind of, like I said, kind of got him through. And so kudos to him, congratulations to him. But like I said, very, very well earned for Vandergrift, because they've
Hmm.
always they've been a program that's kind of been knocking on the door, the
Right,
last few
right,
years.
right.
And but finally, like I said, this is kind of like the cherry on top, the crowning achievement for them. And it's just something they're very, very proud of. And you never know, like I said, it could be a start of an establishing of a well-owned machine here on out. So now they've set the bar high for the next, for next year's class. And can they do the make a deep run again next year?
Yeah, and typically this is how these runs are built, right? Last year arrived, excuse me, arrived to Georgetown state semifinal, right? Region 4 champion. This year, Region 4 champion, breakthrough to the final and win state. So this is one of those things where now, how do they follow this up now, right? Is like to become an actual power, not just within the region, but now across the state. Can they make that deep run, return to a state semifinal, or defend the title? Which, as we all know, as hard as it is to just to win in the playoffs, period, it's harder to win a state title, and it's twice as hard as winning a state title, defending a state title, right? So, which makes it equally impressive when you see the likes of Salina, right, winning four in a row, or you have, right, you had recently Seven Lakes winning back to back. That's extremely difficult, right? So, congratulations to Vandergrift as they win. I know we're going to let them enjoy this one first. They just won their first one. But congratulations to the Vandergrift Vipers as they win their very first soccer state title, and they emerge as the 6A boys D2 state champions, following in the footsteps of their football team, which also won a state title earlier
Mhm.
this year. So I know that was covered quite a bit. So pretty great representation there for Region 4. All right, we move on. All right, third match of the day. This was you talk about fireworks. This one was it was interesting because this had everything of back and forth, tight match in certain moments, and then Capel just ultimately ran away from Lake Travis. But this was this I told multiple people that this is probably the most exciting 6-2 match I've ever seen. Because it was, I mean, there was 5 goals. This will tell you how tight it was there for a period, because you had 5 goals in a span of 14 minutes in this game. And that kind of speaks to how it just was nuts. It was back and forth. It was like, hey, whatever you can do, I can do better. And then that led us to this final score here of Coppell 6, Lake Travis 2. Thoughts on this one, Coach?
So this was like I mentioned. This was a rematch from a game from January to the second, and we had another game that was like that. Wakeland versus um, trying to
Cedar
get off
Park.
my head. Cedar Park.
Yeah.
So what was it gonna history repeat itself again here? Had Lake Travis, have the confidence to go in and snatch it away from Capel. But like I said, this was a back and forth game, and you got to give it to Capel. Like I said, they didn't back down, and they kind of saw, what, we're not going to end up like Wakeland, and they took it to them. And it's surprising that, like I said, they put 6 goals on them. And you don't really see those often here in a state final. Maybe a few years ago, I think what Salina put one. I think what
Hmm.
against Stephenville. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the last lopsided game. Um, normally these games have been very very tight, like a
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
goal, 2 goal games. But Capel kind of found their groove, and they just didn't look back. And like I
Yeah.
said, Lake Travis just wasn't able to recover. But Estola was a great game, and like I said, kudos for both teams to get to this far. Like I said, to be like I said, they face each other for their first game, and they face each other for the very last game of the season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just says a lot. So,
Well, I
but
think
like I
I
said,
think the part of this here, Coach, was why this game ended up. You see the scoreline that you see. I think, excuse me. Kudos to both teams for very different reasons. Capel just absolutely loaded with talent, and they
mhm.
knew exactly what they wanted to do, and their execution was incredible, right? And it took them a little while. And Lake Travis, part of the reason why the scoreline was what it was as well was because Lake Travis came to play, right? Lake Travis, they were not going
Mhm.
to sit back and just and try to try to park the bus and hold Capel as long as they could, knowing that they were the favorite, and they also knew what to expect to a certain extent from having played them back in January there in the Governor's Cup in Georgetown. But I think both teams, this game was very wide open. This game was very exciting. This game was, I mean, set pieces on both sides, but particularly Capel in such a short time frame. It was execution. That's the big thing, right? Is we talk about the soccer gods never is what I tell my players, right? Soccer gods don't pay the team that deserves to win, right? What they do is they reward the soccer gods reward execution, and that's really what it was in this game with Capel. Because excuse me, you had some unbelievable goals, some unbelievable set piece goals as well. And yeah, I mean, there was a span in there for a very, very short while where it was 3-2. Capel to Lake Travis, and then Capel just goes off in terms of their set pieces. And like I said, 5 goals in 14 minutes. Very, very exciting game. It's kind of one of those to where if you didn't know, right, if there was no scoreboard, you would think it was a little bit tighter there for a large stretch. But ultimately, Capel, their execution and just their level, their talent was what wins out. But a lot of kudos to Lake Travis in terms of them coming to play. Yes, they didn't have one of their star players, no excuses. They came to play, so which lended itself to a very entertaining match. Coach, thoughts? I know you had something else.
Yeah, just like I said, I mean, it could have gone either way. Like I said, because the second time around, when you see another team, you make your adjustments. Plus, you're playing at a different level that you would normally start in January. January, you're just basically kind of clearing all the kinks and so forth. Here, you're basically kind of a well-oiled machine that's already gone through some game, especially those playoff games, to get to this part. So, um, but you got to give it to Capel. Like I said, they just didn't let up, and I think they knew if they took the foot off the gas, it could, it could come back. It would come back and bite them in the butt, and could have probably lost that game. So they knew what was at stake, and they just didn't let up. And they showed that they wanted it, maybe wanted a little bit more, and here's the end result. Congratulations to them.
Yeah, when Lake Travis scored that second one, it made it 3-2 for a little bit. It was kind of one of those where a lot of people just kind of stood up in their, just sat up in their seats a little bit, and they're like, "Oh, we got a game here," and because it went 2-1, then 3-1, then 3-2, and then Capel decides to just put it in overdrive. But it was still it was a very entertaining match on Saturday. So, and Coach, thoughts on MVP here?
So the MVP of the game for it was Summer Chen from she's a senior for Capel. Excellent game. She had a break.
Gonzaga commit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so Lady Zags there, and she got two. She got a brace and an assist. Um, like I said, which earned her those MVP honors. Like I said, she was a really a catalyst for for this game. Really kind of very involved with the offense and so forth. But congratulations to her. Good luck to her over there at Gonzaga. I'm sure she's going to do a lot of great things over there.
Yeah. So again, final score: Capel 6, Lake Travis 2. Capel, congratulations on their third title. Check me out, fact check me on that. I believe it's their third title,
Mhm.
third state title, and they are your 6A girls D1 state champions. All right, and we move on to the nightcap, the final match of the 2024-2025 season. Klein Kane and out of Region 3 or Region 2, I should say, and A-Leaf Elsick out of Region 3. Thoughts on this one, Coach?
Well, very rare that we have an all Houston area final.
Correct.
Like I say, it's rare, but like I say, Region Two is kind of one of those wacky regions that has Dallas, East Texas, Houston, and Central Texas. But like I said, Klein Kane, we had Coach Carrasco on the last show, and what can you say about the job he's done this year? Really, those kids really bought into his system of play, but also the culture, and they got him their first district title. And then they got him a regional championship, and they like he mentioned, they knew they were going into this game. They're very familiar because they, like I said, they dropped one to them, but the
Hmm.
boys knew, hey, they weren't going to be afraid. Like I say, hey, it's a clean slate here, and um, they're ready to go. Same thing with Ailey Filsick. I mean, they made a statement, like I mentioned, against that game against Seven Lakes. That 5-1 win, and going into this game, I think a lot of people really felt as the favorite. But
Right.
I mean,
Right.
they give us a like the soccer said, hey, we're not done with the season yet. They got us into extra time and just want a little bit more soccer before 2025 close. But what
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
great
And it
game! It was
follows.
back,
Yeah, it
huh?
follows suit. It follows suit with last year's final, right? The last
Mhm.
match of the season, going to double overtime. It was obviously 0-0, headed into overtime, and tail end of the first overtime. Parker Glenn gets so we talked about the Maradona run, right? It makes about a 30
Mhm.
yard run. I don't know how he got that shot off, but it was it was pretty amazing. If you have not seen it, go on there, jump on social media, and check out that game. What ended up being the game winner.
Yeah.
But this was, yeah, you're right. I think after how Ailey Felsek had defeated Katie Seven Lakes, it was you had the sense that it was the overwhelming belief was this was probably Ailey Felsek's year, right? That they would be victorious in this one, that they would be the favorite coming into this. But excuse me, but I guess everybody forgot to tell Coach Carrasco, his boys, and Klein Kane, right? Because they came to play. This was interesting one. This was a very like defensive oriented match, right? Neither team, both teams trying to, kind of impose their will, but the defense, right? The defenses just came to play, play after play, first half, second half, back and forth. Neither team relenting. So very much, obviously, not beyond just the score. This was in terms of individual defending, group defending. That's what stood out to me in this one. And in the end, Coach Carrasco, in his first season at Klein Kane, you want to talk about an incredible historic season, right? First season there, they win their first district title. They go undefeated and unbeaten in district play, and they win the state title as well on the heels of a just unbelievable penalty shootout in the state semifinal. And yeah, I think pretty amazing. Thoughts on MVP, Coach?
Yeah, what do you say about Parker Glenn's run? Like I said, it was Maradona esque.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can kind, if you can kind of put it side to side, you can kind of see, uh, the kind of the comparisons, just to
Yeah.
him weaving through the defense. And like I said, I think the adrenaline, just when he received that ball, they're like, you know what, I got to take this. Something got in him, and that adrenaline flowed, and he just buried that shot, and that was it. That's all, and that basically wrote the.
Excuse me.
I mean, I guess the storybook ending of this special season for them.
Such an amazing story, right? An
Mhm.
amazing story here, and we got Harry Austin in here as well. Harry, how are you, buddy? Thank you for joining us, chiming in here. Some nonsense as usual from you, but otherwise, thank you for the kind words here. Always appreciate you. Thank you for all your work this year as well on bracketology, all the work that goes into that, because it is a lot. It is a lot. So thank you for all that. Really appreciate you, buddy, and looking forward to seeing AJ lacing them up next year. So yeah. So we talk about Parker Glenn, MVP. Klein Kane
Mhm.
wins their first state title, and we're going to discuss that more in a bit in the show. But yeah, I mean, a beautiful story, great story it is. Coach Carrasco in his
Ye-
first year, and makes it happen for the Hurricanes. 1-0. They emerge over over a highly talented A-Leaf L6 squad. 6A boys D1 state champions, the Klein Kane Hurricanes. Anything else, Coach?
Yeah, like I mentioned, well, the Alien folks, 'cause they had a great season too. I
Right.
did actually read a story about them. They actually came out on Texas Monthly. Then they
Hmm.
discussed about the program, and they mentioned about this team was probably a lot better than the team that won the 2018 championship. The coach from ALS mentioned about the 2018 team was like a very raw team. We had a lot of raw talent, but they
Hmm.
found a way to win. This team was a little more polished, but and determined. But I mean, but the story that talk about Eli Filsick, they may not have a lot of this, as far as like the financial backing from some other schools, but it's very inspiring for them too. No shame on them. Like I said, to get to this
No,
far,
no.
it's accomplishment, because like I said, you can look back and say, hey, we did knock off the two-time defending state champions. And that's very hard to say,
Yeah,
to kind of brag about a little bit.
yeah,
Yes, you fell a game short, but I think those boys will be motivated. But I think this is just the beginning for Ailey Vilsick. I think now they're able to kind of turn the page from this, but look forward to the next season. And they're gonna be, like I said, they're gonna be a team to be reckoned with these next few years. And I won't be surprised they're back at a game, at a final, and maybe the soccer gods will be on their side, and they'll get one. But
yeah,
kudos,
yeah.
like I said, yeah.
Go ahead, Coach. Go ahead.
But I was gonna say, just kudos, also, like I said, the Klein Kane.
Yeah,
Um,
I think this
he's
says
just
more. This says more about Klein Kane than Ailey
Mhm,
Filsick, right? Because just conventional wisdom tell you after they put away Katie Seven Lakes the way they did, they're the favorite
mhm.
coming in. They were just highly talented, just like you said. Great, extremely well coached, and I mean They got some specimens on that team, and Klein Kane just didn't care. Klein Kane just that just speaks to the level of talent as well. This is a team last year. Klein Kane, Coach Carrasco will tell you that, yeah, they had an okay season, all right, but they still kind of underperformed by in terms of the talent that's on that team because here they are, largely the same group a year later, and now they're state champions. So, yeah, and congrats, Parker Glenn, MVP of this match as well, and probably one of the absolute best goals that I saw that I've seen recently in the state tournament, state championships, whatever we want to call it. But this was just, hey, I'm taking it over. I'm going to goal, and I'm going to score. That's what it was, and then that proved to be the difference. Any other thoughts on this one, Coach?
No, just like I said, just to finish the season with this game was probably the best part. I mean, what more could you ask for this team? And like I said, also with Klein Kane, like I said, they from what we talked to Coach Carrasco last time, and mentioned this program. A lot of the attention was with Klein because Klein was kind of the staple for that district for the last few years. But hey, they finally. I think this is also the beginning for them, also for Klein Kane. They set the bar high, and I think Coach Grasso. I'm going to be surprised if he comes back here again. I mean, you never, like I said, I think he's built the culture there, and I think it's going to
Yeah.
attract a lot of those kids to come play for him because I think he really inspires those players.
Dude, that's a walk off. I'm retiring if I'm him. I'm hanging him up. I'm not yet. Like, dude, what? What's the only other way I can follow this up is go undefeated, completely undefeated, win every single
Back
game,
to back.
and win another state title, right? And if I do that, I don't know. I'm probably leaving the country if I do that. So congratulations, Coach Carrasco. Hey, Coach Carrasco, Coach Poole, they were our last two that came on, right? Came on the podcast, and last coaches that came on win state titles. Just saying, just saying, just saying. So, uh, congratulations to all of our coaches, all of our players who emerged state champions, but also to our teams, our runners up. Congratulations. Hold your heads up high. Just to make it this far to be playing on the last day of your season, last game on the last day of your season is incredibly difficult and incredibly special. So no shame in that. So take great joy in that. But that does it for that. But so that does it for our four games, and we move on. One of the things that we wanted to look at here is our regional breakdown. How did the regions fare here in the state championships? As you take a look, thoughts on this, Coach, as we go by region by region.
It was more balance, I think you can say. Um, if you kind of break it down with Region One and Region Two, kind of being the Metroplex area, they came out with a 6-6 record, and then with Region Three, Region Four, they came out with a 6-6. So basically, a 50-50 split, if you can say, as far as with the state titles. But I know last few years has kind of been lopsided, but this year I think it proved that a lot of the regions are starting to close the gap. We're getting more and more talented teams. I know here in Region Four, like I said, we're getting some really good 4A teams that really are standing out. Making those runs to the final games. Um, Houston's kind of back in it. Like I said, you had Houston, Stratford. We had three teams from the Houston area in the finals. With Stratford, Elsick, and Kane. Um, but then, like I said, you have your Dallas area teams that have kind of been the dominant squads. But I think this year you can see it's just more competitive, and we'll see what next year. Like I said, maybe the scales are starting to kind of tip a little bit more to certain other regions, and but yeah, a little surprised there with Region Four going 4-4. That's 8 games there for them. So that says a lot. That Region Four had more teams in the state finals.
Yeah, it was a great year, right, for collectively coming into the state championships for Region 4. Region 1, surprisingly, kind of, I'm not going to say underperforming, but you're used to seeing them with probably the most teams, the best record coming out, but yet they still emerge, above 500 in this out of this group, right? So that still speaks to the power, the strength of Region One, And then region two. So a lot of this, the numbers you saw, a lot of the matchups were region two versus region four. So quite interesting when we look at this. Anything else, Coach? When we look back at this, more so in terms of the regions, anything else kind of get you?
Just a little surprising with the number of losses for Region Two. I thought maybe there would be maybe a couple more wins, but overall, I think it's like I said, it's the surprising thing is it's more balanced. I think that's what I think a lot of people are for want to see more of the balance of the represent out of the representatives of all the four regions and so forth.
Correct.
Uh, like I said, we'll see how. I can only imagine the numbers for next year how they'll look. Like I said, you know, Region Four should be real proud to have 8 representatives in state finals. Region Two, like I said, they had 7, so that speaks volume because normally Region One gets the more of the attention there, and it shows that Region Two teams have, and like I said, are taking care of business against Region One. But like I said, Region Three, I think is starting to coming up a little bit more, have more competitive teams. So I think we'll see probably hopefully next year a little one of them's going to have more representatives than the other. I think kind of like what we saw with Region Four.
Yeah, yeah. And again, this it awfully tough. And every year it's kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes you see some
Mhm.
regions that are good year, strong year, up year, down year, what have you, or the numbers are high in terms of arriving to the state tournament or what is now the state championship. But then the state, how you fare at state is a different story, right? So it's a mixed bag, but the data is always interesting. Sometimes it speaks to things to come the following year and where certain regions are trending. Other times it's an anomaly. So, but yeah, you talked about the balance, right? I think that's what strikes at the core here. The equity, the balance. I think that was one of the other big driving factors behind the D1 D2 split, the push for it, the excuse me, the very quick push for it as well, where it kind of now who knows how long exactly these discussions had been happening, but obviously when they said it's like, hey, we're going to go with this, it was like, wow, it was a surprise to a lot of people. But the balance is a key piece, and that's the perfect segue to this, which brings us to our wanted to congratulate our first time champions. That was one of the big things that stood out here, right? Was out of the 12 champions that were crowned this past weekend in Georgetown, nine, count them, nine, right? So more than two-thirds, all right, or what is that, three-fourths, I should say, right?
Three
Sorry,
fourths.
not a math major. 75% are new or first time state champions, right? For their communities, for their schools. Thoughts on this, coach, when you look back at this?
It just goes to show that the talent their new programs are popping up with a lot of talent, or they're developing a lot of that talent and becoming, I guess, to not say household names yet, like certain squads that we see year in year out. But like I said, if you look at these teams, what their accomplishments basically set them. They're It's a building block for them to take that next step to be one of the quote unquote the elites. And like I said, you look at Salina, you look at what Solid Carroll's done with the girl side of Marcus's and so forth, and on the boy side with Seven Lakes. Uh, this is, like I said, this is something that can really jumpstart, like I said, your program, take it to the next step, and attract. Like I said, what it also does, it attracts, especially within your school district and the player, like the feeders, like your middle schools. A lot of the kids are maybe like, hey, these guys won state. I want to be part of this. They're going to be, you'll see more kids at the tryouts and so forth. So, like I said, but it's a great thing to see new first timers. It just shows, like I said, how deep high school soccer here is in Texas. A lot of them had, like I said, very sensational seasons. And some of them, like I said, were surprising. Like I said, like Austin Itchy being the first public charter school to win a state title. That says a lot there. And they may not be the last one. And then Kenyon Randall being one of the first ones to win a state title from the Panhandle area. Um, Walnut Grove only in their second season. in
Was it
varsity
second?
played a
Was it second? I thought it was third. Thought it was
third.
third. I have to go back and
They
check. I
mentioned
have to go back and check that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think they mentioned it was their second. I'm not too sure, but to regardless, 1, 2, or 3 seasons to win it that quick,
Hmm.
that, that says a lot, And like I said, then you look at other teams that kind of been knocking on the door. They've been powerhouses in the regions now. Like I said, now they're becoming state cars. Like A&M Consolidated, they're gonna be year in year out. Now they're gonna be a staple. You can, like I said, you saw in my RPIs. They've been in my RPIs the last few years, but now they have something to kind of the show. Like, hey, we accomplished something, and now we're gonna want more. So it's just a kudos to all these programs. And who's to say? Maybe next year it could be the same thing. We could have another 8, 9 or 10, or all 12 or first timers win it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that you can clearly see here within this group of nine here is a big chunk of these squads are not going anywhere. Right.
Mhm.
So I know Canyon Randall, for example, having their MVP as a sophomore, right? Walnut Grove, their MVP was a
Freshman.
freshman, right? So excuse me. Now, even though I know a lot of people were up in arms, just saying, taking nothing away from the named MVP, but a lot of people really were pulling for the Walnut Grove MVP. So, and rightfully so, from the perspective of he had some incredible save. That game was just lights out, them in Southwest. But what I think that speaks to a lot is you talked about it, A&M Consolidated, right? Austin Achieve has kind of been growing in terms of they're just now they're a regional power. They're in 4A, right?
Hmm.
So and Salado, I don't think is going anywhere. So Klein Kane, right? Coach Carrasco, depending upon graduation, but now they have an established, he's established a culture there. He's established something. So what does that transpire into next year? I guess that will tell us now. What do these teams do the following year? Thoughts on that, Coach?
Yeah, once you win it, like I said, I think one coach mentioned, I forgot who we spoke with, the past is the past. For this new group, like I said, for the players that are returning from winning this, they gain some valuable experience on what it takes to get to this. It's a difficult journey, but it just shows. It's like I said, it's always a gut check time when you come to the playoffs. But that's what you want. You want to build a tradition. You want to build expectations, and I mean, you kind of look at like high school football. You have your elites every year in and year out. They set the bar for all those younger players, for the JVs, for the freshman teams, even for your middle schools. Um, that's this. It's something, like I said, it's something to be proud of. But I think even like we read of the comment with Chiefs, the preparation for next year starts today. It's what can we do to top this? Can we get back to this spot? Can we defend our title? And now, instead of being the role of the hunter, now you're the hunted, because you're gonna have that target on your back.
Correct. Yeah.
So how do the players react to that type of pressure?
Yeah.
So it's a lot, but the thing is, winning the state title really does a lot to promote your program and help, and really helps it grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Your community as a whole, right? Your
Mhm.
school, your community. Um, we had Harry in here talking about, so was the split playoffs a success? I think it was, but still needs some work. But overall, I like it. So I think a couple of things, right, on this. First of all, what is your definition of success, right? Everyone coming into this when it got a lot of people by surprise because it was enacted so quick. But so what was everyone's going to have a different definition of success, right? But I think overall, as a whole, if you talk to the people in attendance there, if you talk to the people, if you talk to administrators, if you talk to the all of the staff, the UIL staff, everybody working there in attendance in Georgetown this weekend, I think they're going to tell you overwhelmingly it was very much a success. Just in terms of what you saw, the fan participation level. I mean, we had towns that were traveling to Georgetown this past weekend. So from that perspective, the level of play was pretty exceptional. Yeah, you can look in moments for sure in a couple of games, but overall, you didn't really have any stinkers, right? generally speaking. So I think I mean, even I told you, right? Like one example is the Capel Lake Travis match, which ended in six. It was 6-2, but it was an extremely entertaining, very fun to watch 6-2. It was you just thought they just kind of ran out of time. They were both tired, but it was a very good match. It was a fun, entertaining match to watch. When you're seeing two teams that are leaving it all out there, and they're playing at a very high level, and it's a wide open game, it's just that's your money's worth, right? That's where you can appreciate that no matter what the final, whatever the score line may be. So that's just one example, right? But the buzz as a whole, I think the turnout, fan attendance, you make a difference, right? Whether you're a student, whether you're a parent, whether you're a coach, I think every coach needs to go there regularly and see this, right? And experience it because it's different when you see it on the field, and yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch. So from that, yeah, Harry talks about, does it need some work? Absolutely. Year one, by no means was it going to be perfect. Will it ever be perfect? You already know the answer to that. No, it will not. So the UAL has to kind of pick its battles. Will they tweak it? I think in the future, absolutely. Will it take maybe 2 to 3 cycles probably before it's just right? Yeah, I think so. I don't see them. I don't see them doing the pre school year split ahead of time between D1 and D2, not in the middle of a realignment cycle. Uh, and I don't know, UAL probably, and if they choose to or choose not to, I'm sure UIL has their particular reasons for that as well. Thoughts on the D1 D2 split going forward, Coach, and your thoughts on just was the split a success? How would you rate this?
Um, I mean, it's great to, like I said, you have first timers winning. I think more opportunities. Um, I would like to see maybe an extra week because that's how greedy I am for a high school soccer. Maybe do a Super Copa week, have the D1s and
Yeah,
D2s play
that
each other.
let
But
it
that ain't
let
gonna
it,
happen.
let it
I know
go.
that won't happen.
I don't have the Frozen
That
soundtrack here. This is where I play Let It Go.
that
So
it'd be nice. I mean, hey, just as a suggestion. Hey, you can never get enough of high school soccer. So shout out to the UIL.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, but the I think I know a lot of people are kind of questioning about the split because yes, there were some teams that had maybe more of the enrollment that shouldn't have been in D2 that really should be D1. Like I said, is this was not going to be perfect this first year season. Now, once we get to realignment on February 2026, the UIO maybe makes that, changes that, and I think they might be. I have a feeling they are going to do that because I did see some of the alignments already for some of the teams are they're already for 2025, 2026. There are some new teams added. I did see a district that had 11 teams. So I think to kind of
Oh,
prevent that, I have more like, or like there's especially like in 4A, we're starting to see a lot of 10-team districts, and I think also you see it here in some of the 6As too, except for that crazy district in 32 6A when you only had five. Um, I think they're gonna more than likely. I think February 2026 when they do the realignment, it's gonna mirror what they do in football
hmm
for as far as and I think that's their goal because I think they want to make it still, I guess you quote unquote say fair, playing schools that are at the right size of their or within the right size of playing against each other. But it's never going to be perfect. But I think if they step into that direction, like I said, maybe like I said, it'll lead to not to say that this wasn't competitive games because there were a lot of competitive games and there were some teams, smaller teams that beat some of the bigger teams. Um, like I said, like I said, it's a just direction just to kind of help improve things and so forth. But also with the split, allowed us to, now you had to go on the road on the state semifinal and on the regional final,
right,
and you
right.
had better quality. Those are probably two better quality games, especially for the regional final. You don't have to play a back to back. And then same thing with the state final. We had better state final games because you don't have to worry about playing the night before, going into overtime or so forth.
hmm
You had 1 week to prepare. So I think that was the benefit, I think, for the split. Plus you'll play one less game too. Like I said, more, like I said, you're already playing a lot of games, especially when you're playing a district with maybe 10 teams. it does take a toll on you. So there were some good, I think there were a lot more positives than negatives, but like I said, there's always room to improvement.
Yeah, and I think from that perspective too, I just feel that I don't know how do we say it. I think this one of the biggest tweaks, one of the biggest things that needs to be tweaked here. Excuse me, sorry. One of the biggest things, apologies. One of the biggest things, all the stuff floating in the air. It's that time of year with allergies, so my apologies. But one of the biggest things I think that needs to be tweaked, probably can be figured out somehow in the future, is the state semifinal, right? And what I mean by that is trying to find a way to make it feel more like a state semifinal, right? Neutral site still, obviously, but I don't know. I had a conversation with a couple of coaches. Is creating maybe a pre 3 or 4 different pre-identified areas, locations, excuse me, within each region, and then based upon where those two teams are from within that region, they would travel to the nearest one of those 4 predetermined locations, right? I don't know if you do that, or your only other alternative is to just do a straight up a coin flip, and one travels to the other kind of thing, to try to produce that true kind of playoff atmosphere, right? That true state level atmosphere. So I think that needs, and I don't think there is not a one size fits all when it comes to that, but I do think that there is some tweaking that could be done from. I don't get me wrong. I think from the format, the structure is good. Can the format be tweaked? Sure, but I think it was nice to see fresh legs from our kids from regional semifinal to regional final to state semifinal, and then of course state semifinal to state final. Those were all very good things, very good things. And I think from that perspective, and of course the health and wellness of our athletes and recovery time, and then putting a good product on the field that is a state level, state caliber experience for the players and for the fans and for the coaches. From all of that perspective, I think UAL got it absolutely right. Uh, your format in terms of that transition piece from regional final to the state final, that's what I think needs to be kind of figured out a little bit more. And we talked about even also state or regional final champion trophies, state semifinal trophies, whatever. I think these are kind of some of the things that were first time issues that never used to be. You never had to worry about it before because there was a procedure in place prior to this year. So, any other reattacks on that one, Coach? Before we move on.
Just like I said, it'd be interesting. Like I said, the way, like I said, you know, it's not a perfect way as far as picking a semifinal, because you did have situations like you had two, like a regional final play, and within the same area or something, or like was it regional semifinals? Like I said, it's going to be. I mean, they could do a predetermined depending on the distance, unless you have a Region Two team traveling all the way to El Paso for a state semifinal, or vice
Right,
versa.
right.
So, I mean, we had a couple of situations kind of close to that. So, um, maybe maybe the old locations where they did have the regional
Well, I mean, you hit on something there, right? There
to
was
some of them, yeah.
to see a regional final take place, right? El Paso is a perfect example. To see a regional
Hmm.
final take place, a 5A regional final, D1 regional final between Americas and El Dorado, right?
Hmm.
You would have never seen that before, right? This
Hmm.
is following. This is on the footsteps of, I believe it was last year, right, where El Paso had 2 4As, right? Two El Paso schools that are 6 miles
San
apart in
Eli,
El Paso travel,
Austin,
or I think 8 miles apart, travel all the way to Fort Worth,
or
right, to
Wichita.
Northwest
Wichita.
ISD.
Hmm.
Had to travel all the way over there to play each other, right? So, so I think from that perspective, that's just one, and why I use El Paso is because that is the extreme, right, in terms of travel.
Hmm.
But yeah, so from that perspective, I think they got it right. I think from that perspective, I think they got it right, and I think that I know you talk to the fans, the people of El Paso, being able to see that regional final was pretty awesome, right? Now, of course, what how that transpired and some of the background story within that is a different story, right? If you know what we're talking about, but aside from that, I think that was pretty awesome to see as well. So a mixed bag. Is it perfect? No. Do I think overall it's a success in terms of the UIL's goal, right? The UIL's objective. Absolutely. I think if you talk to, go talk to the fans, the communities of, of Canyon, Randall, right, Austin, Achieve, A&M Consolidated, just to name it, Klein Kane, right, they'll tell you that they absolutely love this. It was a great opportunity. So, and in the end, did everybody have a chance? Yes. Do some people feel like they maybe got slighted a little bit? I know there's going to be some, without a doubt. It's never going to fail. But I think that the interesting part in terms of just the split period, the D1 D2 split, is what I kind of noticed, in my opinion, was it felt like there was far less of a importance, I guess, or not an emphasis, but maybe an importance of on winning a district title. If you still want to aim to win a district title when you start the season, but as you're navigating your district play, what you're for the most part, what you're shooting for is that top D1 or D2 seed, right? In terms of how the bracket plays out, right? How it'll lay out. But in some cases, you had whether it was D2 or D1s, you had top seeds in either one of those divisions, and they didn't make out, right? It was so it's this mixed bag of emphasis on D2 D1 title, plus still also waiting on just the difference between a district champion, the importance or the relevance versus what it used to be prior to this new format. And we got Coach Heyman in here as usual, trying to make it all about himself, but asking for a shout out. So, Coach, appreciate you, buddy. Hope sorry your Cougs didn't get it done in the final, but I thought they played admirable. I thought they played very well, and they were very fun to watch. But yeah, definitely missed you out here while you were in Countdown City. But we'll have to make sure we get together. But yeah, that's a lot, man.
Mhm.
That's a lot.
Do you think maybe to put importance of the district title, whoever wins the district title gets an automatic home game in the first round? Maybe to kind of still, I mean, to have it as at least important, because I think that was a lot of complaints that, hey, there's
I
they
don't
should that
see
you
I
should
don't
get
see
that.
UAL enacting that. I don't.
Mhm.
Not anytime soon. I mean, you can make those. They can make those recommendations. I think how you go about that is coaches, you know, talk to excuse me, coaches, talk to fellow coaches in your district. What is the general thought process? Some districts may not really see the importance for it, right, or the relevance of it. Others might really want that. Many may want that. I'm sure. But that was the other discussion, right? Should a one seed over a two seed, right, host? Because here's the other thing, right? Is some districts, particularly in by district, once you get into area, things start to change, right? Area and beyond. But in by district, there are certain districts that have, for lack of better words, kind of memo of understandings or a gentleman's agreement, right? Where the higher seed within respective districts in the by district round will host, right? And I'm speaking to that from personal experience because that was my experience this year for my girls, for my squad in the state playoffs in the by district round, and problem solved, right? If it's a memo of understanding between two districts ahead of time, then it's done deal, taken care of. It takes the guessing game, the process out of it, but it's limited to just who hosts. Now, location, all those other factors, they're still in play, right? They're still in play. It's just a matter of who hosts. So yeah, so there's a number of factors, right? And like I said, I think UIL likes to keep it that way because what works in San Antonio may not work in Wichita Falls, or it may not work in Houston. It may not work in the Panhandle, in Amarillo, or in El Paso, right? So they like to kind of continue to give that autonomy to the districts, right, to the respective coaches within those districts, those athletic coordinators. So so they're not dictating every single thing through every single round. But yeah, I mean that's just one that's just one example. But like I said, that's also when it comes to the district title. That was just my kind of my opinion through my observation, I guess. Now, I could feel totally different about it next year. So, so who knows, right? I don't know yet. So, but that is going to do it for the 2024-2025 season as it wraps up with Klein Kane and Ailey Felsick on Saturday night in our nightcap. Thoughts on? I know I asked you this earlier, Coach, but when you look back on it, right in 2024-2025 school year, 2025 season wrapping up, you look back at the season, and here we are, 12 episodes into Inside Texas High School Soccer, but what would you feel would be the best way to describe maybe a sentence or two or a couple of words? How would you describe this year?
Surprising. There's a lot of surprises this year. Uh, some good and some bad. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure a lot of people know about the bad, but the surprises, I think there's a lot more. I think the good outweighs it. Just the amount of teams that really, like I said, that kind of rise up to the occasion and made statements. Like I said, look at your new those first time state champions. I think that was a big surprise. I think the surprise is also the new format. How was it going to work? And then, like I said, it was a good. We had some great matchups, and regardless of what anybody says, it was great. You had regardless if you had road. Like I said, there were some teams had tougher roads than others, but that's just how the dice rolls in. But if you take care of business, you're gonna keep on going. So that's I think one word I'm gonna describe this year was surprising.
Yeah, and for me, I think I was using it throughout, right, throughout all of our episodes whenever we were interviewing our different guests. But I think if I had to wrap it up in one, it would be historic, right, from our D1 D2 split to the mercy rule, and then I think you really saw it play out this past weekend in Georgetown with, I mean, nine first time champions. What will it look like in the future? We shall see. But I think definitely historic, definitely one for the books. Uh, the from the UIL perspective of what they were, their objective, their goal. I think they hit the mark. Do certain things, as Harry mentioned, do certain things. Is it perfect? No. And I think they knew that going in. Everybody knew that going in. Will it ever be perfect? That's debatable. Probably not. But always tweaking it, always maybe trying, not being afraid to tweak it to make it better for the whole, right? So, but yeah, I would say historic overall. So, but yeah, any final thoughts when you look back on 2020, the 2024-2025 season in terms of a match or two or a moment that stood out to you? Anything that like immediate, like really captured you this year?
Uh, I think the well for me experiencing the being at a regional final and not being able to watch it because they got canceled. I mean that's I
Yeah,
mean
good
I have
choice.
never
Good choice.
I mean I just have never experienced something like that,
Yeah.
and that was very disheartening because I was really looking forward to seeing that game. I wanted to see the talent level of both teams, and it was a really hyped up game, and then when I saw that message initially, and then heard the announcement on the intercom, I was like, what the heck is going on here? And it was like I said, that was my surprising moment this year. I mean, I was like, I'm not like I said, did experience some mercy rule games, but
Hmm.
I mean, that's like okay, it's not a big deal, but this was a big deal because, like I said, I saw. I mean, I was there to see the expressions on some of those players and stuff. I wouldn't wish it upon any other team, but when you look back at it, you know, the sense of as a coach, you have to have a lot of responsibility. You got to be very responsible with a lot of things. You got to dot your I's, check your T's slash your T's, and all that because it could cost you. And who's to say if that doesn't happen? You talking about another team winning the state title.
Right. Right.
And so that was my not to be on the negative side of all that, but that was kind of like the shocking of something I had never experienced, covering high school soccer or even coaching it too as well.
Yeah. 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 I think without a doubt. Right. I think the same for me from the excuse me, from the perspective of just the forfeitures, the disqualifications, right? The ineligibility piece. It's too hard to overlook, obviously, but unfortunate, of course. But I think that it's very unfortunate. I think a work in progress, things that I think that have to be we have to get right individually. I think it comes back on us in terms of as coaches, as as communities, as our administration, all of that perspective of and making sure that we're not only doing things correctly, but helping each other out, kind of catching things right. Because I think it's not that hard. I think for things to slip through the cracks, honestly, by accident, just through lack of communication, right? And if you're familiar, even if a PAPF form, right, it's not that hard for someone to, even when good intentions and they're filling one out, it's not that hard for someone to fill one out incorrectly based upon their interpretation of a particular question, right? Because in some cases you have some families that have very complicated, right? Complicated, issues, complicated situations. So the communication piece between coach, administration, player, coach, administration, parent, all of that, all of those are factors. Thoughts on that, coach?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that needs, like, I think, it needs to be done. I know from my experience, we made sure of those things. We don't want to have any surprises after a game or after the right before the playoffs or
Yeah.
something. We wanted to make sure that everybody had their eligibility. Luckily for us, we didn't have to deal too much with the PFT because I came from a rural town, rural border town, so it wasn't too much of a factor because we didn't get, like I said, a lot. I know with the Valley players, Valley, they do get players from across, but they have, like I said, they're entitled to go to school there.
Yeah.
Unless they meet all the paperwork. We didn't really have many come across, so we didn't deal with that too much. Many of the times when I was coaching, but still, we want to, like I said, but grade wise, that's something we did. We always emailed me and my former head coach, and when I took over, we made damn sure that those players are eligible, making sure that you know communication with the teachers, that was a
Mhm.
big thing, having communication with the teachers, having building relationships with them, making sure
Yeah.
you know they're on task with the split, because remember, they're a student athlete, they're student first. Playing is a privilege, and that's how that's my philosophy on
Absolutely.
that. And so they had to take care of business in the classroom, and there was issues in the classroom. Yeah, we
Mhm.
we had a little chat, but the thing is having communication with the teachers, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. If there was like I said, if or like, hey, he's struggling here, what can we do to help that
Right.
situation, things like that. So that goes back to
Right.
that, but also with the PFT,
The
of more what
PAPF. Yeah.
is that.
PAPF. Yeah.
Yep, yep. That's also have to have communication too with your ads or your athletic coordinators, even with the district chairs too. You got never assume things. Just if there's something you don't know, take it to the
Mhm.
next person. Hey, you know what? I have a situation with this player. Can we double check this? I just want to make sure everything's right.
Yeah.
Because that way we don't
Yeah.
have these situations come before the playoffs and so
Right.
forth. So,
Yeah. And
so
that said, I think the accountability piece.
mhm.
If you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, if you're doing something that is wrong, there's something that is illegal, like you should be held accountable. Period. Right. That's what separates us, right, from different other levels of play. Right. There are rules, there are policies, there are procedures, and the everybody does it this way in this area where we're from, or it's been going on for years. you know, I'm I'm sorry. That's That's not a reason to make it okay, because then this is what happens, right? These situations here. And of course, I'm not really necessarily talking about grades, all right, but I'm just talking in terms of procedures, right? Policy, or how people are
Mhm.
operating when it comes to transfers, right? So got to do a better job, right? So to try to put it back now on, hey, it's the UIL's fault. Why did they let? Why did no? I think it starts at our level, right? It starts at our level, and and to have coaches, right, that are saying that we didn't know, or we didn't know that this was, that, to me, that doesn't cut it, right? We've got to do better than that. And if you're not sure, talk to your fellow coaches, right? Talk to your athletic communication is the bottom line, right? Talk to your athletic coordinators, and ask for feedback, ask for input. If you're not clear on something, right? And when in doubt, right, you do a PAPF form, right? When in doubt, do one. All right, just to be making sure that everything is on the up and up. So cannot cannot put it any simpler than that. All right, but that is going to do it. A reminder: you can follow us on Twix, on Twitter X, excuse me, as we call it, at 50 underscore 50 podcast, on Instagram at 50 underscore 50 podcast. So remember, so X is at 5050 pod. Instagram is podcast spelled out, right? So, and then also on YouTube, go on there, like, rate, subscribe. Make sure, please subscribe on YouTube. That's the one that we're trying to grow right now. Our particular channel, trying to get to 500 subscribers. Go on there, hit the bell, like, rate, subscribe, hit on or you hit the live notification bell, and you'll receive everything that we do. And then again, like I said, for those of you who listen to the audio podcast portion, or version, I should say, whatever your preferred podcast platform is, go on there. You can find us, the 50 underscore 50 pod, or the 50/50 podcast. Go on there, give us a review as well, subscribe, because that always helps us keep us in the algorithm as well. So, Rafa, it is that time, buddy. Stoppage time for episode 12. All right, we are not done. This concludes obviously our regular season. I'll talk about our upcoming episodes in a minute, but before we do that, stoppage time. Final thoughts. Take it away, Rafa.
Yeah, just like I said, congratulations to all the teams that won the state title, but also congratulations to all the teams that made it to the final, but also everyone else that they participated in the playoffs. It's hard to get to the playoffs. It's even harder to win one. So, like I said, it should something to look to be like I said, really be proud of, and also that the teams that didn't make it, today's a fresh start. Start planning, planning for the next season. What can we do to get to that point? How can we be the next Klein Kane? How can we be like Salado, Vanderbilt, a lot of these first time winners? It starts today. The players out there be dedicated. Also, like I said, some of you, like I said, source for recruitment wise, congratulations on your signings, and for the juniors, like I said, start kind of preparing for that as well. And like I said, just looking forward to speaking to some state championship coaches and hearing their stories, and some of them may hopefully maybe some of the players. And then I look forward to the new 2025-2026 season.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Yeah, another season in the books, man. Season 5. Can you believe that? In a show that started by accident. It's been awesome. I know we put a couple out there. I was still in El Paso at the time, and we put, I think, one or two of these together, right? And then we got a lot of immediate feedback. Like, it's like, wow, this is, hey, what is this? What are you guys from? Blah blah blah. It was good show, good info. Blah. You need to do more, and then we just ran with it, right? So here we are, season 5. I think we've ended up with. I think we're probably about 65 episodes in or so total into this series, and it's been great, man. So my first. My first thought to that is two things. One, Tarafa, thank you, buddy. You've been awesome
Okay.
through this whole process. Really appreciate you. You make it fun. You keep it fresh. You're well informed. You're a subject matter expert when it comes to a lot of this stuff across the state. So really appreciate you, and for putting up with me, because I know that's always fun. But to you all, right? To our fans, to our supporters, to our listeners, right? To the fans in terms of Texas high school soccer, the communities. our student athletes, our coaches. Really, really, really appreciate you guys. You all continue to be the reason why we do it. So thank you for all of that. To all of our student athletes this year, right? So whether you made the playoffs, right? So whether you were a one and done in the first round, or you lost in a state championship game, or you won a state championship game, anywhere in there in that process, just first thing, just be grateful for where you are and what you have, because there was a lot of schools that didn't get the chance to say they were going playing in the state playoffs. So for that group, right, that group that didn't that we've spoken to before, that didn't make the state playoffs, keep that feeling in there, keep that chip on your shoulder, and work hard in this off season, work hard in the summer, work hard next fall, right? Getting ready to make the difference and learn from all the things that you could have done maybe a little bit differently, right? Individually and collectively. And we'd love to see so many new teams in the state playoffs next year and joining these new 9 state champions that we have. And to all our teams, particularly those in the state playoffs that lost, that came up short, and then particularly this weekend in Georgetown in the finals, hold your heads up high, right? It's very hard to do just to get to where you are or where you were, how far you made it. So hold your heads up high, enjoy the moment, be in the moment no matter what, because you're never guaranteed that you're coming back. And when you win one, right, congratulations to our 12 state champions. But when you win one, you're never guaranteed that you're coming, unless you're Salina, I guess. Uh, you're never guaranteed that you're coming back every year. So congratulations to our 12 state champions. And then the last thing is to all our coaches, fellow coaches, my fellow Texas high school soccer coaches, all of you across the state. Thank you. Cannot thank you guys enough for just the overwhelming support that you all have given the podcast, and the conversations I have with so many of you. Thank you so much. You all, that is part of what inspires us to continue to want to do this and give you more in-depth coverage, and just trying to evolve and do more from a different perspective, sometimes from an insider perspective, because there's a lot of stuff that we don't put out there because it's either off the record, or we're not trying to be the first to get to break news. We're trying to be the ones that get it right. So a number of factors that come into play when it comes to all of that. But with our coaches, thank you so much. Our athletes, our student athletes, thank you so much, and our coaches. Your student athlete out there listening to this, make sure make sure you appreciate your coaches, take care of your coaches as much as they take care of you guys. Because I think we're still one big family. We're still one big community that is still growing. How far this community of ours that is Texas high school soccer has come in, I would say the last couple of years has been phenomenal to watch. I always tell people I've had the best seat in the house, all right, from this perspective, being behind the camera with a microphone in front of me, but also the other piece has been just, I talked about it back in Tasco back in November. One of the, excuse me, one of the best things, the best part that really stood out to me this year is just, and when I have these conversations with coaches, right, everywhere, and I have these conversations that I had with so many coaches this past weekend in Georgetown, was the pride, the taking pride and ownership in being a Texas high school soccer coach. That is a beautiful thing to see, just because, I don't know, 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, I don't know that you could say that to the same level as you can now. I'm not saying that people didn't care before. It's not what I'm saying at all. I just feel like there's a higher level of what we're doing collectively as a whole is generating good energy, good vibes in the right direction as a whole. So, and this is why we got to get, when we come up short on certain things, we got to do better collectively. So thank you to everybody, to our entire Texas high school soccer community. Thank you. It's been a great year. Have really loved it. Have really loved being on this side of it, and just excuse me. Sorry. I don't know. Just grateful for everything. It's been so much fun. Grateful for everything. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, any final thoughts, Rafa? Oh, I think you're on mute, buddy.
Sorry for that. Sorry. Like I said, well said. Like I said, I think a lot of people out there don't understand. Like, as far as the coaching, high school coaching, it's a fraternity. Like it's a fraternity sorority. It's a brotherhood, a sisterhood together, and we call it all look out for one another and so forth. And maybe people who haven't been coached in this kind of don't understand how very protective we are of this, because like I said, it means a lot to us, and what it means a lot to us is the growth of the sport. Because it's always been on the back burner, and now it's starting building that momentum, and it's getting its proper respect and coverage. And like I said, I think once you get into that, if you ever have a chance to coach, high school, that you'll understand kind of what our perspective about this, and our goal of doing this for. No, it's not for the likes or for validation, this and that. We want this to grow. We want we want to be the representative for the kind of carry the flag for the players and the coaches out there, and for the sport out, high school soccer. So like I said, we look forward to another great season for next year. Like I said, looking forward to a lot of great stories, a lot of great, so maybe some hopefully we'll get some same stories like we had with Klein Kane or like with Salina, and stuff like that. So, but it's going to be fun for next
year. Yeah. All right, and that will do it again. Season 5, episode 12. Thank you to everybody who's been with us. Thank you to all of our coaches and guests that joined us this season. And stay tuned, as we will be coming back soon with our special shows, that we dub the champions. Right. So no, not sure how many we'll get, but we'll do our best to get as many as we can over the next couple of weeks. But looking forward to bringing you guys some great stories with some championship coaches and players. So make sure you stay tuned for those. But otherwise, thank you again for joining us. And you know what to do. Until the next time, keep downloading and keep listening. You've been listening to the 50/50 Podcast, powered by the 50/50 Podcast Network. Help us continue to grow by liking, rating, and subscribing on all major podcast platforms. And don't forget to follow us on X at 50_50pod, on Instagram at 50_50 podcast, as well as on YouTube at the 50_50 podcast. Until the next time, keep downloading and keep listening.